Commander Marcus Cole stood at the observation deck of the broken station, watching the enemy fleet fill the darkness of space like a swarm of metal locusts. His hands were steady even though his heart was not. Behind him, the last 300 soldiers of the human defense force waited in silence. They knew what was coming. They all knew. The Zarthok Empire had conquered 17 star systems in the past decade. Their ships were faster, their weapons stronger, and their numbers endless. Every species that had tried to fight them had fallen. The Valorians were gone. The Keth were slaves. The proud Mantari had surrendered after losing their homeworld in a single day. Now it was humanity's turn. Marcus was 63 years old. He had fought in the border wars when he was young. He had led the defense of Mars' colony when the pirates came. He had buried 2 wives and watched his only son die on a distant moon fighting these same Zarthok bastards. He had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. "Commander," said Lieutenant Yuki Chen, appearing at his side. She was barely 25 with sharp eyes and steady hands. "The evacuation ships have cleared the system. The civilians are safe." "Good," Marcus turned from the window. "And our volunteers?" "Everyone who wanted to leave has left, sir. What remains is everyone who wanted to stay." Marcus nodded slowly. 300 souls had chosen to die here at Outpost Gamma 7, the last human military station before Earth space. They could have run. The orders from High Command had been clear: retreat, regroup, prepare for the defense of Earth itself. But Marcus had asked for volunteers to stay behind, to slow the Zarthok advance, to buy time for the evacuation of the outer colonies. 300 had raised their hands. He walked through the station's corridors, past soldiers checking weapons and engineers making final repairs. Some saluted as he passed. Others simply met his eyes and nodded. There was no fear in their faces. Not anymore. Fear had been burned away in the weeks of preparation, replaced by something harder and more dangerous. Purpose. In the main hangar, Sergeant Major Torres was organizing the defense teams. The big man from New Barcelona had hands like hammers and a voice that could shake walls. He had been with Marcus for 20 years, through every battle and every loss. "Torres," Marcus said, "status." "All teams in position, Commander. We have rigged every corridor with explosives. The reactor is ready for overload on your command. And I have 30 volunteers who are very angry and very well armed waiting at the primary breach points." "Angry?" Torres smiled, showing a gold tooth that caught the harsh light. "We lost people, sir. Everyone here lost someone. The Zarthok think they have already won. They think humans will break like the others did. They are about to learn different." Marcus clasped the big man's shoulder. "Make it count, old friend." "Always do, sir, always do." The station shook as the first Zarthok missiles struck the outer shields. The battle had begun. Marcus reached the command center as the second wave hit. The holographic display showed the enemy fleet in terrifying detail: 47 warships, each one larger than Gamma 7 itself, arranged in the classic Zarthok crushing formation. They did not expect resistance. Their formation was designed for intimidation, not combat. "Open a channel," Marcus ordered. "Sir," the communications officer looked confused. "Open a channel to the Zarthok flagship, all frequencies. Let everyone in the sector hear this." The officer's hands moved across the console. "Channel open, Commander." Marcus stood tall, straightening his worn uniform. He knew the Zarthok would be watching. He knew other species, hiding in the darkness, would be listening. He chose his words carefully. "This is Commander Marcus Cole of the Human Defense Force, speaking to the Zarthok Empire. You come to our space with your ships and your weapons, thinking we will bow like the others. You are wrong." He paused, letting the words carry across the void. "I stand here with 300 soldiers who have chosen to die rather than run. We will not surrender. We will not negotiate. We will fight, and we will hurt you, and when we fall, our people will remember. Every human child will know what happened here today. They will know that their fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters stood against the darkness. The Zarthok response came quickly. The flagship's commander appeared on the screen, a massive creature with gray skin and eyes like black pools. The translator struggled with the harsh language. "Foolish human, your species is weak. You have no allies, your fleet is broken. Surrender now and we will make your death quick." Marcus laughed. It was a real laugh, deep and genuine, and it made the Zarthok commander pause. "Quick? No, I don't think so. You see, we humans have this strange habit. We don't know when to quit. We fight when we should run. We stand when we should fall. It's not logical. It's not smart, but it's who we are." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper that somehow carried even more weight than his shouts. "Come and take this station if you can. But I promise you this, you will pay for every inch with blood. And when you're done with us, there will be more humans waiting, and more after that. We're stubborn like that." He cut the channel. The command center was silent for a moment. Then Lieutenant Chen spoke, her voice carrying a note of wonder. "Sir, that was broadcast across 6 systems. The signal bounced off every relay in the sector." "Good," Marcus turned back to the tactical display. "Let them all hear. Let the conquered know that someone is still fighting." The Zarthok came in hard, their landing craft punching through the weakened shields like fists through paper. Marcus watched from the command center as the first breaches occurred in the lower decks. The defenders were ready. The corridors of Gamma 7 became killing grounds. The humans had spent weeks preparing every corner, every junction, every door. The Zarthok soldiers, towering and powerful, walked into ambush after ambush. Explosives hidden in walls, sharpshooters in maintenance ducts, traps that turned simple hallways into death boxes. For every human who fell, 3 Zarthok died. The fighting lasted for hours, the station filled with smoke and screams and the crack of weapons fire. Marcus moved from position to position, rallying defenders, directing fire, and when necessary, picking up a rifle himself. He was not young anymore, but he was still dangerous. In the medical bay, Dr. Sarah Park worked without rest, patching wounds and saving lives even as the walls shook around her. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Kowalski held his ground with a team of 12, repelling 4 separate assaults before finally falling to a grenade that took 6 Zarthok with him. By the 6th hour, only 80 humans remained. The Zarthok had lost over 1,000 soldiers. The enemy commanders were furious. This was supposed to be a simple operation, a small human outpost, poorly defended, ready to fall. Instead, it had become a meat grinder, chewing through their elite troops with terrifying efficiency. What the Zarthok could not know, was that their communications were being monitored. Every order, every report of losses, every frustrated curse was being recorded and broadcast. Across the sector, other species listened in silence. Slaves and conquered peoples heard the mighty Zarthok stumbling against a handful of humans. And something began to stir. On the slave world of Veloria Prime, a Velorian worker named Shenka listened to the broadcast through a hidden receiver. Her people had been broken 3 generations ago. They had accepted their place as servants, as less than nothing. But now, hearing the human commander's defiance, she felt something she had not felt in years. Hoping. She was not alone. In the mining tunnels, in the processing plants, in the cramped quarters where her people lived and died under Zarthok rule, others were listening too. They passed the news in whispers, in stolen glances, in the ancient hand signals that their masters had never bothered to learn. The humans were fighting. The humans were winning. Well, not winning exactly. Shenka knew enough about war to understand that the defenders of Gamma 7 could not survive. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they were making the Zarthok bleed. They were proving that the Empire was not invincible. And that changed everything. Far across the galaxy, in the hidden refuge of the Mantari remnant, Elder Vox listened to the same broadcast. The Mantari had been a proud warrior race once. They had fought the Zarthok for 20 years before their homeworld fell. Now they hid in the darkness of the outer rim, nursing their wounds and their shame. "They are fools," said one of his advisors. 300 against 47 warships. It is suicide. "Yes," Vox agreed. "But listen to them fight. Listen to the Zarthok panic. These humans, they are not like us. They do not know how to surrender. What use is courage without victory?" Vox turned his ancient eyes to the stars beyond the viewport. The Zarthok have ruled through fear for 100 years. Fear of their power, fear of their cruelty. But fear is a chain, and every chain can be broken. What these humans are doing, it is not about victory. It is about showing the galaxy that the Zarthok can be hurt, that they can be resisted. He fell silent for a long moment. "We should have done this. We should have made a stand like this when we still could. Instead, we ran, and our people have been running ever since." Back on Gamma 7, the battle continued. Marcus had pulled his remaining forces back to the command center and the surrounding sections. The Zarthok had taken 3/4 of the station, but they had paid dearly for every deck. Lieutenant Chen appeared at his side, her uniform torn and stained with blood that was not all hers. "Commander, we have maybe 2 hours of ammunition left. After that, it's hand-to-hand." "Then we fight hand-to-hand." Marcus checked his own rifle. "Half a magazine left. Have we gotten any response to our broadcasts?" "Not directly, sir, but—" she hesitated. "We're picking up chatter on some unusual frequencies. It looks like someone out there is listening. Multiple species, they're talking about us." "What are they saying?" Chen's eyes met his. "They're saying the humans are crazy. They're saying the Zarthok have finally found someone who won't break. They're saying—" she paused, something like wonder in her voice. "They're saying maybe they should start fighting too." Marcus felt something warm spread through his chest. It might have been pride. It might have been hope. It might have been the blood from the wound in his shoulder that he had been ignoring for the past 3 hours. "Good," he said quietly. "Then it's working." The next assault came 20 minutes later. The Zarthok had changed tactics, sending their elite shock troops instead of regular infantry. These were bigger, faster, and more heavily armored than the soldiers they had faced before. It didn't matter. Sergeant Major Torres held the main corridor with 15 soldiers. When his ammunition ran out, he picked up a Zarthok blade from a fallen enemy and kept fighting. He killed 4 more before they brought him down, and even then, he took another with him as he fell, his hands around the creature's throat. Dr. Park defended the medical bay with a stolen pistol and a surgical laser. She saved 3 wounded soldiers and killed 2 Zarthok attackers before a grenade ended her fight. Her last words were instructions to her assistant on how to treat a chest wound. One by one, the defenders fell. But for every human death, the Zarthok paid 3 times over. On the Zarthok flagship, Fleet Commander Zoreth watched the casualty reports with growing disbelief. He had brought 47 ships to take a single outpost. He had expected the operation to last hours at most. Now, 18 hours into the battle, he had lost over 2,000 soldiers and 4 assault ships to sabotage and suicide attacks. "What are these creatures?" he demanded of his advisors. "No species fights like this. No species wastes lives so freely." "They are humans, Fleet Commander," his tactical officer replied. "A young species from the third arm of the galaxy. They have been spacefaring for less than 500 years. 500 years. They fight like they have been at war forever. According to our intelligence, Fleet Commander, they have been. They spent most of their history fighting each other." Zoreth stared at the report. A species that had perfected war against itself. A species that had learned, over thousands of years, every trick and every tactic and every way to hurt an enemy. and now that knowledge was being turned against the Zarthok Empire. "Destroy the station," he ordered. "All ships, fire everything. I want nothing left but atoms." "Fleet Commander, our troops are still aboard." "They are already dead. They just don't know it yet. Fire." In the command center, Marcus watched the tactical display light up with incoming fire. Dozens of missiles, hundreds of energy beams, all converging on the station. There was no way to survive. There was no way to escape. But there was one last thing he could do. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Same as before, all frequencies." Lieutenant Chen was the only other person left in the command center. She nodded once and made it happen. "This is Commander Marcus Cole," he said, his voice steady despite the blood loss and the exhaustion and the certain knowledge of death. "This is my final message. The Zarthok are about to destroy this station because they could not defeat us any other way. They have lost over 2,000 soldiers trying to take a single outpost defended by 300 humans." He paused, watching the missiles grow closer on the display. "To my fellow humans, do not mourn us. Remember us. Remember that we stood. Remember that we fought. And when the time comes, fight like we did. Fight until they fear us. Fight until they understand that humanity will never, ever give up." He looked at Chen. She was crying, but she was smiling too. "To every other species listening, you see now that the Zarthok can be hurt. You see that they can bleed. If we can do this with 300 soldiers and a broken station, imagine what you could do. Imagine what we could all do together." The first missiles were seconds away now. "This is Marcus Cole signing off. It has been an honor. Don't let our sacrifice be in vain." He reached out and took Chen's hand. She squeezed back. "Good speech, sir," she said. "Thanks, Lieutenant." The missiles hit. Outpost Gamma 7 became a star for a brief moment, a flash of light and heat that could be seen across the sector. Then it was gone, reduced to fragments and memories. But the message remained. The recording of Marcus Cole's final words spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. It was copied and shared and broadcast from system to system, planet to planet, ship to ship. The Zarthok tried to suppress it, but they might as well have tried to stop the stars from shining. On Veloria Prime, Shenka played the recording for her fellow workers in the darkness of the mining tunnels. When it ended, no one spoke for a long time. Then an old male named Torval, who had not smiled in 20 years, looked up with tears on his face. "If the humans can fight," he said slowly, "why can't we?" It was a simple question, but it changed everything. The Valorians had been slaves for 3 generations. They had forgotten what it meant to resist, but they had not forgotten how to hate. And now, for the first time in living memory, they had something else, a reason to hope. Shenka began organizing. Quietly at first, gathering trusted workers, sharing the recording, asking the question that Torval had asked. The answer was always the same. If the humans can fight, why can't we? Within weeks, she had a network of over 1,000 Valorians ready to act. They stole weapons from the guards. They sabotaged machinery. They passed information through the ancient hand signals that their masters had never learned. When the uprising came, it came suddenly and everywhere at once. The Zarthok garrison on Veloria Prime was caught completely off guard. They had grown comfortable, lazy, certain that their slaves would never dare to resist. They were wrong. The fighting was brutal. The Valorians had no training, no armor, no experience in warfare. But they had numbers and they had rage, and they had something that the Zarthok had tried to destroy, the memory of what it meant to be free. Shenka led an assault on the central command post. She watched friends die around her. She took a wound to her side that would leave a scar for the rest of her life. But when the last Zarthok soldier fell and the banner of the Empire was torn down, she felt something she had never felt before. Pride. The news of Veloria Prime's liberation spread as fast as Marcus Cole's final message had, and it had the same effect. Other slave worlds began to stir. Other conquered peoples began to ask the question, if the Velorians can fight, why can't we? Among the Mantari remnant, Elder Vox called a council of war. The warriors who had hidden for so long gathered in the great hall of their hidden station, their eyes bright with a fire that had not burned in years. "We have watched and waited," Vox said. "We have told ourselves that the time was not right, that we were too few, that we could not win. But look at what has happened. 300 humans held off an entire fleet. The Velorians have freed their homeworld. The galaxy is waking up." He slammed his fist on the table, the sound echoing through the hall. "The time is now. We are Mantari. Our ancestors conquered stars. Our fathers fought the Zarthok for 20 years. Are we to be less than them? Are we to hide while others fight our battles?" The answer was a roar of voices, a thunder of fists on tables, a wave of fury that had been building for decades. The Mantari war fleet, hidden and preserved through years of exile, powered up its engines for the first time in a generation. They were few in number compared to their former glory, but they were still dangerous, and they were done running. Across the Empire, the Zarthok High Council met in emergency session. The reports were alarming. Uprisings on 7 worlds. The Mantari fleet on the move. Human resistance stiffening along the frontier. And everywhere, that damned recording of a dying human commander telling the galaxy to fight. "This is intolerable," snarled Supreme Commander Grath, the highest military authority in the Empire. "We have ruled these species for 100 years. They cannot simply decide to resist now." "And yet they are," replied First Minister Keth, who managed the Empire's political affairs. "The question is not whether this is tolerable. The question is how we stop it." "We crush them," Grath said simply. "We send every ship, every soldier. We burn their worlds and salt their fields. We show them what happens when you defy the Empire." "We tried that at Gamma 7, another counselor pointed out. 47 ships against 300 humans. The humans lost, yes, but so did we. We lost 2,000 soldiers, 4 ships, and something more valuable than either, our reputation." The council argued for hours, but they could not agree on a response. Some wanted total war. Others wanted negotiation. Still others wanted to retreat, consolidate their forces, and let the uprisings burn themselves out. What none of them understood was that it was already too late. The spark that Marcus Cole had lit could not be extinguished. It had spread too far, too fast. The galaxy was burning, and the Zarthok Empire was about to learn what fire felt like. On Earth, the news of Gamma 7 had arrived days ago. The Human Defense Force was mobilizing everything it had for the defense of the homeworld. Ships were being built, soldiers were being trained, weapons were being forged in factories that ran day and night. But the most powerful weapon was the story. Every recruitment poster showed Marcus Cole's face. Every training session began with his final message. Every soldier knew the names: Cole, Chen, Torres, Park, Kowalski, and the others. 300 heroes who had shown the galaxy what humanity was made of. Admiral Elena Vasquez, commander of the home fleet, stood before the assembled officers of the Human Defense Force. Behind her, the stars of Earth's sky shone through the station windows. "We have received communications from the Mantari remnant," she announced. "They are offering an alliance." A murmur ran through the room. The Mantari were legendary warriors, feared even by the Zarthok. An alliance with them could change everything. "We have also received word from the liberated Velorian government. They too wish to stand with us." The murmur grew louder. "And in the past week, we have heard from the Keth Underground, the Sauran Resistance, and a dozen other groups who have been fighting the Zarthok in secret for years. They all say the same thing. They want to join us. They want to fight." She paused, letting the words sink in. Commander Cole and his people died believing they were buying time for Earth, but they did something more than that. They showed the galaxy that the Zarthok can be beaten. They gave hope to the hopeless, and now that hope is turning into action. She stood taller, her voice ringing with conviction. We are not alone anymore. For the first time in this war, humanity has allies, real allies who will fight and bleed alongside us. Commander Cole's sacrifice made that possible. Now it is our duty to make sure it was not in vain. The room erupted in cheers. Officers who had been preparing for a desperate last stand now saw a chance for victory. The war was far from over, but for the first time, it felt like a war they could win. In the depths of space, the Mantari fleet made its first strike against a Zarthok supply depot. The attack was swift, brutal, and completely successful. The ancient warships of a fallen empire proved that they had lost none of their deadly skill. Elder Vox stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the depot burn. Beside him, a young human officer served as liaison, one of the first fruits of the new alliance. Your Commander Cole, Vox said, would he have approved of this? The human, a lieutenant named Jackson, considered the question. He would have said it was a good start. Vox made a sound that might have been a laugh. A good start. Yes, I think I would have liked your Commander Cole. Everyone did, sir. Everyone does. The burning depot lit up the darkness, a beacon of hope in a galaxy that had been shrouded in fear for too long. The rebellion had begun in earnest, and there would be no stopping it now. The war that followed was long and brutal. The Zarthok Empire did not fall easily. They had ruled the galaxy for 100 years, and they fought with all the fury of a wounded beast to maintain their grip on power. But the Alliance, as it came to be known, was relentless. Humans and Mantari fought side by side in the outer systems, their different styles of warfare complementing each other perfectly. The Mantari brought centuries of military tradition, tactical brilliance, and ferocious courage. The humans brought adaptability, innovation, and a stubborn refusal to accept defeat that continually amazed their allies. The Valorians, newly freed from bondage, provided intelligence and sabotage. They knew the inner workings of the Zarthok Empire better than anyone, having served as slaves in every corner of it. Information flowed from liberated worlds to Alliance commanders, revealing weaknesses that had been hidden for decades. The Keth, a species of engineers who had been forced to build weapons for their masters, now turned their skills to the cause of freedom. They upgraded Alliance ships, designed new weapons, and created defensive systems that confounded Zarthok attackers. And every day, more species joined the fight. The Sauron, the Threll, the distant Krovian collective, species that had never met humans, never heard of Earth, found their way to the Alliance because of a story. The story of 300 humans who had stood against an empire. Marcus Cole's name had become a battle cry. Soldiers of a dozen species shouted it as they charged into battle. It was written on the hulls of warships and carved into the walls of liberated prisons. He had become more than a man. He had become a symbol. 2 years into the war, the Alliance launched its most ambitious operation yet, the liberation of Zarthok Prime itself. The Zarthok homeworld was the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy. 300 warships guarded it. Orbital defense platforms ringed it like a crown of thorns. Ground forces numbering in the millions stood ready to repel any invasion. The Alliance brought 500 ships. It was the largest fleet ever assembled by free peoples, gathered from every corner of the galaxy. Human dreadnoughts flew alongside Mantari battlecruisers. Valorian frigates provided escort for Keth engineering vessels. Sauron raiders and Threll carriers filled out the formation. Admiral Vasquez commanded from the flagship Freedom's Price, a massive battleship that had been named in honor of Gamma 7's defenders. Beside her stood Elder Vox and Shenka, now a general in her own right, along with representatives from every Alliance species. Open a channel, Vasquez ordered, all frequencies. Just as Marcus Cole had done 2 years before. This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Galactic Alliance addressing the Zarthok Empire. Your fleet is outnumbered. Your allies have abandoned you. Your empire is crumbling. We offer you one chance to surrender. She paused, letting her words carry across the void. 2 years ago, a human commander named Marcus Cole stood against your best with nothing but courage and will. He showed the galaxy that you could be beaten. He lit a fire that has spread across the stars. Now that fire has come home. On the Zarthok flagship, Supreme Commander Grath watched the incoming fleet with something approaching despair. He had fought the Alliance for 2 years. He had won battles and lost others. He had watched his empire shrink month by month as world after world fell or rose in rebellion. We cannot win this, his tactical officer said quietly. Their numbers are too great. I know, Grath's voice was hollow. I knew from the moment we failed to take that pathetic human outpost. We should have crushed them completely, left no one alive to tell the tale. Instead, we let their commander speak. We let his words spread. We gave them a martyr. What do we do, Commander? Grath considered his options. Surrender meant execution. The Alliance had not forgotten the centuries of Zarthok cruelty. Flight was impossible. The Alliance fleet had them surrounded. Only one choice remained. We fight, he said. We fight and we die as warriors should. Perhaps we will take some of them with us. Perhaps we will show them that the Zarthok were worthy enemies. The battle for Zarthok Prime lasted 3 days. It was the largest naval engagement in galactic history, involving over 800 warships and millions of personnel. The space around the Zarthok homeworld became a sea of fire and debris, filled with the wreckage of both sides. The Zarthok fought with desperate courage. Whatever else could be said about them, they were warriors, and they died like warriors. But courage alone could not overcome numbers, determination, and the righteous fury of species that had been enslaved and brutalized for generations. On the second day, the orbital defenses fell. Alliance forces began landing on the planet's surface, fighting their way toward the capital city where the High Council had retreated. The streets ran with blood as Zarthok soldiers made their last stand. On the third day, the council chambers were breached. Supreme Commander Grath died on the steps, fighting to the last with a blade in his hand. The council members were captured, their long reign of terror finally at an end. When the banner of the Alliance was raised over the capital, a cheer went up that could be heard across the planet. Soldiers of a dozen species embraced, wept, and celebrated together. They had won. Against all odds, against a century of tyranny, they had won. Admiral Vasquez stood in the council chambers, looking at the empty thrones where the Zarthok rulers had sat. Shenkai stood beside her, along with Elder Vox and the other Alliance leaders. It's over, Shenkai said, her voice thick with emotion. I never thought I would live to see this day. It's not over, Vasquez replied gently. The war is over, yes, but the work is just beginning. We have to build something better than what came before. We have to make sure this never happens again. Vox nodded slowly. The human speaks wisely. Victory is easier than peace. We must be careful not to become what we fought against. Agreed. Vasquez turned to face her allies. The Alliance was born from tragedy. 300 humans died to give us this chance. We owe it to them, to all the millions who died under Zarthok rule, to build something worthy of their sacrifice. In the weeks that followed, representatives from every Alliance species gathered on Zarthok Prime to negotiate the terms of peace and the structure of the new galactic order. It was not easy. Old grudges ran deep. Different species had different ideas about justice and governance. But they had one thing in common, the memory of why they had come together in the first place. When arguments grew heated, someone would mention Gamma 7. Someone would quote Marcus Cole's final words, and the arguing would stop, replaced by a renewed determination to find common ground. The Galactic Council was formed 6 months after the fall of Zarthok Prime. It included representatives from every sentient species, with equal voice and equal vote. The humans, despite being one of the youngest spacefaring peoples, were given a place of honor in recognition of the role they had played in the liberation. And at the heart of the council chamber, in a place where all could see it, a memorial was built. A simple plaque bearing 300 names, with a few words carved above them. They stood when others ran, they fought when others surrendered, they died so that we could live free. Remember them. 50 years had passed since the fall of the Zarthok Empire. The galaxy had changed beyond recognition. Where there had been tyranny, there was now freedom. Where there had been fear, there was now hope. The Galactic Council governed with wisdom and justice, learning from the mistakes of the past. On Earth, in a small town by the sea, an old woman named Sarah Cole watched the sunset from her porch. She was 93 years old, the last living relative of Commander Marcus Cole. She had never met her great uncle, but she had grown up with his story. Everyone had. A shuttle landed in the field behind her house, its sleek lines marking it as Mantari design. Sarah smiled. Her visitors had arrived. Elder Vox's grandson, Vox the Younger, emerged from the shuttle along with a Velorian woman named Shenka II, granddaughter of the liberator of Veloria Prime. Behind them came a crowd of young people from a dozen species, all wearing the uniform of the Galactic Academy. "Ms. Cole," Vox the Younger said, bowing in the Mantari fashion, "thank you for agreeing to speak with us." "Please call me Sarah." She gestured to the chairs arranged on the porch. "Sit, sit. I've made tea. Well, my assistant made tea. My hands aren't what they used to be." The young people settled in, their eyes bright with curiosity. They had traveled across the galaxy to hear from her, to learn about the man who had started it all. "What would you like to know?" Sarah asked. A young Keth raised a tentacle. Was Commander Cole always brave? Did he ever feel fear? Sarah laughed softly. "My grandmother told me stories about him when I was a child. She said he was afraid all the time. Afraid of failure, afraid of letting people down, afraid of dying alone and forgotten. But he learned something that most people never do." "What was that?" the young Keth asked. "That courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done despite the fear. He was terrified when he made that last stand. Terrified and tired and in pain. But he did it anyway because someone had to." Shenka II leaned forward. "My grandmother always said that your ancestor saved her people, that without his message, the Velorians would never have found the courage to rise. And my grandfather says the same about the Mantari," Vox the Younger added. "He tells the story of how he was ready to spend the rest of his life hiding until he heard that broadcast." Sarah nodded slowly. "That's the thing about courage. It spreads. One person stands up, and suddenly others find the strength to stand too. Marcus didn't save the galaxy by himself. He just showed everyone else that it was possible to try." A human student, barely out of childhood, raised his hand. "Do you think he knew? When he made that broadcast, do you think he knew what would happen?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "I don't think he knew what would happen. I don't think anyone could have predicted it, but I think he hoped. He hoped that someone would hear and take heart. He hoped that his death would mean something." She looked out at the sunset, her eyes distant with memory. "There's a recording that wasn't part of the official broadcast. It was found in the station's data core after the battle. My grandmother played it for me once." The young people leaned in, their attention complete. It was Marcus talking to himself the night before the attack. He was sitting alone in his quarters, just talking, working through his thoughts. He said he didn't expect anyone to hear it. He said he just needed to say it out loud. She closed her eyes, remembering the words she had heard so long ago. He said, "I don't know if this will matter. I don't know if anyone will remember us, but I know that we have to try. Not because we'll win, but because some things are worth fighting for even if you lose. Freedom is worth it. Hope is worth it. The chance that someone somewhere will see what we did and think maybe they can do it too, that's worth dying for. The porch was silent, except for the sound of the waves on the distant beach. He was just a man, Sarah said quietly. Not a god, not a legend. Just a tired, scared old soldier who decided to do the right thing, and because of that, everything changed. Vox the Younger stood and bowed again, deeper this time. Thank you, Sarah Cole. Your ancestors' story has been taught to every child in our civilization for 50 years, but hearing it from you like this, it makes it real. It was always real, Sarah said. That's the whole point. After the students left, Sarah sat alone on her porch, watching the stars come out one by one. Somewhere up there, on 100 different worlds, beings of every shape and kind were living free because of what her great-uncle had done. She thought about the galaxy her great-uncle had lived in, a galaxy of fear and oppression, where the strong crushed the weak and hope was a dangerous dream. And she thought about the galaxy she lived in now, a galaxy where different species worked together, where freedom was cherished, where peace had lasted longer than anyone had thought possible. The change had not come from armies or weapons or political treaties. It had come from a single act of defiance, a single voice refusing to be silent, a single spark that had grown into a fire no one could extinguish. That was the lesson, Sarah thought. That was what Marcus Cole had proved. One person could make a difference. One act of courage could change the course of history. It didn't matter if you were young or old, strong or weak, part of a mighty empire or a tiny outpost. What mattered was the choice. The choice to stand when others run. The choice to fight when others surrender. The choice to hope when all seems lost. Sarah smiled and raised her glass of tea to the stars. "Thank you, Uncle Marcus," she whispered. "Thank you for showing us the way." Far above, in the darkness between the stars, a lone ship drifted past the coordinates where Outpost Gamma 7 had once stood. It was a Mantari vessel on a routine patrol, but its captain had ordered a slight deviation in course to pass through this sacred space. There was nothing left of the station. 50 years of cosmic drift had scattered even the debris beyond recovery. But every ship that passed through this system, regardless of its species or mission, paused for a moment of silence. The captain, a young Mantari named Vex, stood at attention as the ship's speakers played the recording. It was the same recording that had been played at this spot countless times before, the same words that had echoed across the galaxy for half a century. "This is Commander Marcus Cole signing off. It has been an honor. Don't let our sacrifice be in vain." When the recording ended, Vex turned to her crew. Humans, Valorians, Keth, and Mantari stood together on the bridge, united in a way that would have been unthinkable 2 generations ago. "We haven't," she said simply, "and we never will." The ship turned and accelerated away, leaving the empty space behind. But the memory remained, as it always would. 300 humans had died here, and in dying, they had given birth to a new era for the galaxy. It had started with courage, a veteran leader who refused to run, a last stand that should have been meaningless, a message that reached across the void to touch the hearts of billions. And it had grown into something greater than anyone could have imagined, a rebellion, an alliance, a new civilization built on the foundation of sacrifice and hope. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, not technology or military might, just the simple, stubborn refusal to give up, the belief that some things were worth fighting for, the courage to stand against the darkness no matter the odds. Humanity had said no to tyranny, and the galaxy had risen to say it with them. That was the legacy of Marcus Cole. That was the truth of Gamma 7. That was why, 50 years later and forevermore, the galaxy would remember the day that 300 humans taught the universe what it meant to be brave.